Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today I want to talk about Lodestar. Now, this is technically one of the newest exotics in Destiny, but it's pretty old news at this point. The reason for this video though is that I kind of just forgot it existed. But having checked it out in its relatively new catalyst, this wacky little gun is at least worth talking about. So, a couple questions I wanted to answer. Is it good? Where should we be using this exotic? And why aren't people using it? Also, before we start, there are timestamps down below for your convenience, and while you're down there, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. And for anyone wanting to be more involved in the community, I just recently made us a Discord server, also linked below. So now, doing our quick overview of the weapon itself, the complexity of this exotic is actually pretty up there. Its main perk reads, this weapon fires a low intensity arc beam with enhanced stability and accuracy. Now this is one of those exotic perks that's pretty much describing the gun because its base form is what is unique, similar to Lord of Wolves or Vex Mythoclast. The deal here is that it's a primary ammo trace rifle with two fire modes. This hip fire trace rifle and then ADS pulse rifle mode. Now, prepare for a flashbang. Here's Mossy Max's primary DPS graph. What we want to follow is these numbers here. Hipfire and ADS are higher DPS than any normal legendary in the game. The hipfire is about equal to Vex Mythoclast and better than a special trace rifle. And the ADS pulse is about equal to Graviton Lance. Bottom line with this is that the weapon itself is numerically pretty potent. As for how to use each fire mode, that'll come as we look at all the perks in this thing, but it can essentially be likened to having both an SMG and a pulse rifle equipped simultaneously. But now moving on, we have the true exotic portion of Lodestar. A second perk that reads, dealing arc damage from any source aligns the battery's coils. When alignment is complete, hold reload to disengage the safety and enable hip-fired starlight beam to apply jolt to any targets damaged for a short time. Aim down sights to slow the rate at which the battery drains. Now, adding a bit to the complexity here, we have this meter that we want to fill. We do this by scoring arc damage hits. The actual damage value doesn't matter, as you're seeing that even with damage fall off, the beam fills the same speed as when we're up close doing max damage. So again, it is just hits. And then when the meter is full, we can hold reload to fully refill the mag and begin draining that meter. Functionally, it lasts 7 seconds normally, but will slow down to 20 seconds if you ADS. Now, what does the meter do? Well, while active, hipfire hits jolt. It does take a couple of hits to register though, so you can't just spin around and jolt everything at max sensitivity. But something to know while in this form that I thought happened but actually doesn't is, well, you do not get increased damage or anything really. The only thing that happens is that our hipfire shots now jolt. Of course, that's very beneficial as jolt is a super potent tool for ad clear as well as being able to stun overload champs. But this jolt actually feeds into the weapon in a different way. That being the other perk it has, where I'm going to read it. When aiming down sights, the beam is compressed into short, high energy bursts that interact with targets affected by arc debuffs, dealing increased damage and causing them to detonate into blinding explosions on final blows. So the first part describes the ADS fire mode, which we already spoke about, but we want to look at how it works against arc debuffed targets. First up is that it flat out does 30% increased damage to them, and this does not have anything to do with the meter. So if you jolt an enemy, then toggle back to normal, the burst will still do 30% increased damage. This also works against any third-party source of debuff, like from abilities. And the other effect is what happens when they die, which is this blinding explosion that actually kinda chunks. You could also use this explosion to stun unstops, although it isn't exactly on demand. So all in all, this other perk is pretty good. But now lastly, before I explain how to properly use Lodestar, it has its catalyst. This reads, while amplified, this weapon gains greatly increased reload speed, aim assist, and movement while aiming down sights. Yeah, it's pretty much a nothing burger catalyst. We get some better stats when amplified, and that's about it. Now, usually in this type of video, we're at the point where we completely understand how this exotic works. But for Lodestar, we actually have to discuss some nuance with how you should be using it. The main thing being, you shouldn't spend as much time as possible with the meter draining. We discussed that the only benefits you get for draining the meter is that you jolt on hit. So rather than constantly letting that run down, what you should be doing is using it in bursts. As an example, you'll get full meter. You'll see a couple targets that you want to jolt, you'll toggle it on, jolt them real quick, and then toggle it back off. This allows you to preserve your meter while you go into your ADS mode, which you'll then do increased damage and cause them to explode when killed. And while you're doing damage, you're refilling that little bit of meter that you just lost. Usually, by the time you've killed or done damage to your jolted target, you'll be ready to jolt the next group of enemies. So this playstyle of getting max meter and then using a little bit, refilling it, using a little bit, refilling it, is what's going to allow you to use Lodestar as optimal as possible. And unfortunately, this optimization isn't surface level. You kind of do need to tinker with a bit, and it almost gives the weapon a skill curve. But having now looked at the weapon, another thing to mention, kind of regarding how good it is right now, is that this is a trace rifle and it interfaces with the trace rifle artifact perks. Overload trace is kind of unnecessary since Jolt handles that already. Beam medic heals a small chunk of health every 3 kills or so, and then harsh refraction is an incredible boost that gives it a 35% damage buff against arc debuffed enemies, which stacks with its exotic perk that pretty much does the exact same thing. So if you run both of these, you'll just be having a very, very lethal primary weapon. But now with the weapon itself aside, how would it slot into builds? Where can we actually use it? Well, I've experienced success with 2 builds that I actually recently put out. One is the Geomag Arc Warlock build, and the other is the Gifted Conviction Prismatic Hunter build. Both these builds interact heavily with arc debuffs and are good fits for Lodestar here. The Warlock build, for example, primarily relies on spawning ionic traces via killing arc debuffed enemies. Lodestar spits out tons of jolt and can also blind. This combination of effects allows it to take the place of Delicate Tomb in that build very well. The Hunter build, on the other hand, uses Gifted Conviction to get damage resist when you jolt enemies. So I'm sure it's easy to see how Lodestar works well there too. Another very good way to use Lodestar is with Cenotaph Mask on a Warlock. Exotic primaries intrinsically spawn more heavy, so you can use this to make heavy for yourself, while your exotic armor piece makes heavy for your teammates. Cenotaph also drops you special, which allows you to act more freely with whatever special you do end up running. Realistically though, anywhere in the game where you want lots of jolt, Lodestar is not a bad option. But now, with what I would consider every PvE facet of Lodestar discussed, why don't we see more people use it? Well, I think this may be a case of my bias. When I play with my friends in clan, it's usually always a mix of Lord of Wolves, Choir of One, Multi-Mac, and Tenacious Mastery. Even weapons that are objectively very good, like Graviton Lance or Vix Mythoclast, don't see much use around me. So for my case, I don't think the reason why I don't see Lodestar is because it's bad. Honestly, having used it recently, it's actually pretty fun. Figuring out the optimal way to use it is cool, but perhaps there's a part of an issue being that Lodestar is actually kind of just complicated. Regardless though, breaking down Lodestar has been a pleasant surprise. I expect this weapon to get particularly juicy if there are any errant trace rifle buffs, and if you haven't tried it, knowing how to use it, give it a shot. And if you have used it, let me know what you think down below. But to give you a single sentence ending, I actually think Lodestar is pretty good. And I think that's everything I wanted to say. Thank you so much for getting this far into the video. Your viewership means an absolute ton. Thank you guys for 15,000 subscribers. Also, thank you to my members. As for me, it supports the channel. A like, a comment, a subscription goes a very long way. You can also join the Discord and come say hi to me personally. If you want to support me and support the channel but you can't think of a comment down below, Lodestar. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day and I hope to see you around.